Yes, so I was saying it's still going to run exactly as you expect it to behave. So provided you set the sizes to a certain initial size. Now notice what happens if I run this. They are still going to enlarge according to the way you planned them originally. So this is how you do it. I know I probably run through a lot of a lot of brick walls in these tutorials. Pardon me, is because I haven't done programming in quite some time now. So I hope this helps you out, and I hope you followed through every change and every um, code I wrote. So let me just scroll you to the beginning of the code. So this is what we first did. We first of all created these five, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 data types of variables. They are fields. So notice where they are written. They are inside public partial class form1 extends form, and they are rectangle data types. And then the next thing I did, we also stored the we also created a variable that will hold the original form size. And then in the form1 load, we made sure we kept track by storing these data. So form original size is equal to this dot size. You can put a pause now and make sure you get all these things correctly. Then after that, we created a method called resize children controls, from which we needed to call this resize control. So yes, you can just uh, skip this method. Make sure you create this method first before you create this one, so that you can call this method from here. So we created this method private void resize control. It takes two arguments, a rectangle object and a control object. So in this one, I just called the argument original control rect, and the second argument I called it a control. Then we calculated the x and y ratio of, that's the change, the proportion change of the x and proportion change of the y, that's for the form. Then to calculate the x ratio, we said we needed to cast this to a float, this dot width divided by form original size dot width. It also needs to be casted to float. I said if you do not cast this to float, you're going to have two division of two integers, which is going to give you another integer, which is going to be wrong. So please remember to make sure you cast this to float. The same thing with the y ratio. When you're calculating the y ratio, is this dot height divided by form original size dot height. Also remember to cast them to float. Then next, we calculated the four components that needed to change on the control. So it's the x for the location, the y for the location, the width, and the height. I just created new variables for that. I call them new x, new y, new width, new height. For new x, you calculate it by saying original control rect dot x multiplied by x ratio, and remember to cast that to an integer. The same thing for new y is original control rect dot y multiplied by y ratio. Remember to cast it to integer. New width is original control rect dot width multiplied by x ratio, and new height is original control rect dot height multiplied by y ratio. Then finally, you set control dot location to be a new point. Remember, this is sorry. Uh, Remember, this is location takes a point, as its data type. So you can just say control dot location is equal to, you create a new point, and then inside the constructor of the point you can pass new x and new y. As we've already calculated new x and new y. The same thing for the size. Control dot size takes a size object. So you create new size, and inside you pass new width and new height. And that's all for this method. Then from this method, you're going to call resize control, pass text box 1 original rect and text box 1, that's the control. For button 1 the same thing, for button 2 the same thing. So if you have 100 buttons, you have to pass all of them here and call resize control on them. Then finally we created the form1 resize event handler by going to form. We click on the form, go to properties window, click on this little thunder to open the events, and then we looked for resize, that's this one, and then we double clicked in here and it created the form1 resize event handler for us. And then inside the resize event handler we just called resize children controls. That's this method, we just call this method, and that's it. So I hope everything is fine and you'll be able to do this. Sorry it took me so long to do it. Okay, see you in the next tutorial.